Greetings, brothers. In my video a few weeks ago, I talked about how I went 4-1 in the STO Grand Tournament and reached the top table. So I wanted to start by breaking down my games from that in a sort of mini-series. So this is the first video, so hopefully you can learn how I play against the different opponents and some of the strategies that I use to get the wins. So like I said, I already did a video of my tournament overview, so it went over my game plan, the army list, and the scoring, and all the tactics. So if you haven't seen that one yet, you probably want to consider watching it. Might be better even to watch it before you dive into this one. I'll link it at the very end, however. So, game 1 against the Tau Empire. I beat him on primaries by 15 points. I did generally pretty well on my primaries throughout the game. Like I said, it's always good to just consider trying to get 40 points for primaries. You can usually steal a single extra 5 points in one turn, make it to 45. For my secondaries, I picked Retrieve Victorious Data, which scored 12, which was above average for this tournament. Oath of Moment scored me 9. My average was 10.8, so a little bit below average. And then Engage on all fronts. Obviously, Tau don't have the vehicle keyword, so even though he's like basically shitloads of battle suits, there's no vehicle keyword in there. And I knew that I was going to have to engage him in multiple fronts if I want to win the game anyway. So Engage on all fronts seemed like a good one. It was a 21-point victory. Not the highest scoring from me on this one. I struggled a little bit against Tau. Tau are very, very strong in shooting. Their Overwatch capacity is very strong, so I had to work around that, and I actually think they're kind of a hard matchup for a Blood Angels list, especially a list like mine that has a limited component of melee units, so we have to make sure that our melee units are used right and they're protected throughout the game. But yeah, managed to take a 21-point victory. So let's look at the Tau player's list. And he had a commander, Farsight, and also a commander in a battle suit. And the commander in the battle suit had fusion blades, which are like a flat 6 damage melee weapon and generally really nasty. They only get like 2 attacks, but if one goes through, it can be really bad news. He had 4 breacher teams with a bunch of the fire warriors. He then had a giant squad of like 9 battle suits, a bunch of air bursters, a bunch of missile pods, shield generators on like 3 of them, and then it also came with 9 shield drones, and this was going to be one of his to the last units. Second to the last unit was also going to be a 3-man squad of battle suits with the fusion blasters, which are basically like multi-meltas. He then had like a couple of fast attack units, Pathfinders, Vespid Stingwings, so he was going to use them to do his Retrieve Victorious Data and some Engage on all fronts. The third to the last unit was the broadside battle suits, and I knew that these were going to be scary. They have a 60-inch range. They have a lot of damage. I've been wrecked by these things before. So the battle suits and I guess both the Crisis battle suits, the 9-man squad, and the broadside battle suits, the 3-man squads. These are the things that scared me the most. I mean, there's not much I can do about deep striking, melt-a-gun fusion suits, as opposed to just react to them when they come in. So what my tactic was going to be to try and deal with those 2 units first. And if you've ever played Tau, you'll know that shield drones can be an absolute nightmare. So I was going to try and go after the shield drones on turn 1. That was my strategy. Kill the shield drones. He's probably going to deploy them where they're in range of both squads of battle suits. So if I try and shoot the battle suits, shield drones are going to absorb a bunch of fire. So I'm going to try and use my Volkite Contemptors to get like max range, kill the shield drones, and then start going to town on the other thing, right? And then he's got a couple of devilfishes so he can move his entry around the map and maybe be a bit more protected. And we're going to be playing on Scorched Earth, and this was a 6 objective map, and I was going to go first. And in this tournament there was 2 key rules. One was any piece of terrain that has windows on the ground floor, or I guess the first floor as you say in America, were going to not count. So if you're in terrain on ground level, you're obscured. So this was actually going to be good here, because I could obscure incursors maybe in this piece, more incursors in this piece, Sanguinary Guard or something can get like a point of attack from this piece. 12 inches out of this piece is very deep and basically threaten these 2 objectives. And the second rule was that anything that was in a forest, and this for all games in the tournament, was going to be -1 to hit if the forest is above 3 inches high, and basically every forest was 3 inches or higher. So this is after my movement in turn 1, but my deployment basically was these 2 Contemptors were over here with the Tech Marine. So if he'd gone first, then like basically he'd have maybe a line of sight on like a single Contemptor through here. This Dreadnought and this would have been back. These Incursors would have been obscured. The Blade Guard were obscured in here. The Whirlwind was obscured here. So if he'd gone first, he'd maybe have line of sight on one Contemptor Volcon. And it's going to be -1 to hit. So he's probably only going to maybe hit it on 5s, because Tau usually have BS of 4. So I was feeling pretty good about this deployment, because I went first, I moved the Volcons where I could line of sight on the shield drones through this sort of crack, kept them in the forest, they're a little bit more protected, pushed the Blade Guards up. I would have liked to push them up a little bit more, but I guess I deployed quite defensively, and I moved my Dreadnought from around here over here so I could get a line of sight from his plasma gun onto the broadsides. You can see here I'd given Chapter Master rerolls to this Dreadnought, so the Chapter Master had given this Dreadnought, the Tech Marine had given this Dreadnought +1, and then it's sort of positioned so the Chapter Master is within 6 of this, so this one would be hitting on 2s rerolling 1s, this one's hitting on 3s rerolling everything, this one's hitting on 3s rerolling 1s. So I'm really buffed up my firepower in turn 1, and I really like to do this. And I'd also over here have my Librarian so he can cast Psychic Fortress and maybe even Might of Heroes. So I was either going to pick the Dreadnought that you can see here or one of these Dreadnoughts over here, and I was basically going to Might of Heroes one of the Dreadnoughts. So one of the Dreadnoughts becomes Toughness 8, and this Dreadnought gets its 5+ Invulnerable save. And I was feeling good about this, and I actually did manage to kill all of the shield drones. I think one Volcon plus the Whirlwind did that, and then the second Volkite, I actually went to town on his battlesuits, but we didn't do too well. I think we killed one battlesuit. I'd really hoped to do more, but I mean, it was an okay start, and it did cut down a bit of his firepower. So, moving on to turn 2, the 2 broadsides that had remained did a ton of damage to this Dreadnought. It actually went all the way down to 1 hit point, even with, you can see here, it was with Might of Heroes. So the Tech Marine repaired it to 4. I did lose another one of my Dreadnoughts, like I said. Tau shooting is generally very, very good. But what he did was he brought that giant squad of 9 battlesuits that I was pretty scared of. He moved them 6 inches forward, I guess, so they could get line of sight and kill this Dreadnought, which is probably the right play. But I guess by doing that, it meant that I managed to jump my Sanguinary Guard in here and then make an charge from an obscuring position into these battlesuits. And that was huge. He actually had Pathfinders here as well, and I actually killed the Pathfinders too. The Sanguinary Guard were able to charge both units. One thing to say against Tau is they don't get to overwatch against heroic interventions, so having these Sanguinary Guard in this building here, positioned in an obscuring position, was actually going to be really strong. Because it gives me 2 options, one way to threaten this objective, one way to basically threaten with the charge. My Assault Intercessors came on the right here to join my Chapter Master, who were going to fight over this objective. My Blade Guard managed to push all the way up and make a charge on this Devilfish. So I was kind of going for my engage on all fronts here. That's why the Chapter Master is just over the halfway line. In hindsight, maybe he's too exposed here, but I was pushing for my engage to all fronts. I wasn't sure my Sanguinary Guard were going to get to survive after basically a round of Tau shooting. I mean, he doesn't look like he's got too much left here, but Sanguinary Guard kind of wear paper armor, and I was kind of convinced that they were going to die. I could have maybe taken my Librarian, who's underneath the Psychic Fortress card, and joined the Sanguinary Guard, but I think a 5-up Invulnerable save isn't that strong anyway, so my Librarian was going to hang out in the middle here, score me Oath of Moment points, and just be a little bit more safe. And I also wanted him to be able to see this Dreadnought, to give it Might of Heroes, so if he did manage to get some sort of firepower on this, or if he dropped in those Melta Crisis suits that he had, this Dreadnought had a little bit more chance to survive, because at Toughness 8, they're only going to wound it on 4s as opposed to 3s. So turn 2 was looking good as well, but then I guess as we move on, what did happen was his commanders and his other broadsides and stuff up here did indeed delete the entire Sanguinary Guard. I actually lost my Chapter Master to this Farsight commander with the fusion blades. The flat 6 damage, I believe 2 of them went through, which doesn't often happen. I wasn't expecting him. I mean, he rolled hot and I rolled poor, and I think he shot maybe like him with a broadside as well, so I lost my Chapter Master, and this kind of flustered me in this game a little bit, just because we don't often lose the Chapter Master. He doesn't often get shot off the table like that, but that's the way it happened. My Assault Intercessors did manage to basically get a charge over here at some point and obsec this away from him for a turn, which was pretty nice. Meanwhile, the Tech Marine was still working on repairing up this Dreadnought, but we did lose the other Dreadnought. Meanwhile, one single Incursor came out and put his foot on this objective, and there was a reason behind that, and the reasoning is the Dreadnought was super weak, the Tech Marine wasn't quite on the objective, so the point was that if somehow he kills the Dreadnought, I don't want to lose primary points, So sometimes if you think you're going to lose a primary, it can be worth having a second unit basically sit on it to guarantee you the points if you lose that one unit. My incursors in this other building in this bottom left were pretty safe, and so they were able to do that. Over here on this left hand side, I'd actually done Oath of Moment with my servitors, so they came in, did Oath, and then died as they do, I guess, to a breacher team. After the Blade Guard not killing this tank in the previous turn, it flew down to basically get on this objective, and I mean, this was an okay play, I think, in that he was trying to get away from the Blade Guard veterans. I guess if he'd stayed there, the Blade Guard veterans probably kill him. But I think he should have unloaded the tank before it flew away, because he didn't unload the tank and the Blade Guard were just sort of here. I was able to move Sixt about here and make a very leisurely charge and basically surround this with the Blade Guard. This is 2 inches, this is 2 inches, this is 2 inches, this is 2 inches. Then I also, in the previous turn, you might have seen the Whirlwind was like flanking up the left-hand side. The Whirlwind was able to join the charge, and what it basically meant was like there was not enough room around this, and it's only got 4 wounds left. If these Blade Guard veterans do 4 wounds to the Devilfish, it will die, and he will not be able to deploy any of the models out of it, because there's nowhere for him to put them. Anywhere he wants to put them is in engagement range, and that is invalid, I believe. So he was going to lose a Devilfish here, and I was going to contest 2 of these, and I was basically going to be able to push these Blade Guards, 3 inches back this way towards this breacher team over here and basically control this side of the map. Meanwhile, this objective feels pretty secure with basically the Tech Marine, the Dreadnought, and the Incursors around it. And my Terminators also came back into Deep Strike back here because I didn't actually take a photo of it, but this forest was where he deployed his Melta Crisis Suits. So he deployed them in the forest to try and kill. I think he killed Contemptor here, and I think he tried to kill this Dreadnought here. This Dreadnought maybe rolled a little bit lucky this time, and they whiffed it. So my Terminators came in here, and the plan, anyway, was my Terminators were going to move and make a nice easy charge. But he actually charged the Tech Marine and the Dreadnought with the fusion suits, and I guess, charge Blood Angels at your peril. The Tech Marine did some good work, and so did the Dreadnought, and we ended up killing all his fusion suits. So the Terminators were kind of left in the open here. Technically, they had to teleport Homer, so I could have removed them from the board, but my plan was to just, I felt like I was going to have the left-hand side of the map, so I was going to push right-hand side, and I was going to try and get something across the centre again, for my Oath of Moment later in the game. And this was turn 3. I still had my Librarian hiding in here, scoring me Oath of Moment points, and he was still Might of Heroes on himself. You can see him, that he just popped out here, and the idea with this Librarian was he was going to go after the broadside battlesuits, right? Because they were the other to the last units that he had, and I could have suppressed them, but there was too many other things around this, so I was kind of just going for like a risky play or something. I figured if I can get my Librarian in, I can kill them and deny him 5 more points as well. But I think in the end, I ended up chickening out of going that way, and I went this way, and we wound up like getting this commander almost dead. We didn't kill him, but we did get him a little bit later in the game. So as the game sort of wrapped in the 4th turn, these Terminators had now held this objective. He has like 1 single crisis suit and a character on this objective. He's the 2 broadsides holding this objective with some Fire Warriors. My Blade Guard veterans, some of them are in cover here holding this. Incursors are still holding this. And these Incursors are now sprung out a bit because he dropped some Vespid Stingwings in the corners, and we killed some in both corners with Incursors, and Incursors did some decent work. So in my turn 4 then, he was feeling very strung out. I mean, I'd lost all my Dreadnoughts, so that was something. But these Terminators were basically able to push up 5 inches, kill this, and then push forward into that board quadrant. The Blade Guard here were going to survive against the broadsides, being that there's some in cover, and they also have their storm shields. And I was able to use my Incursors basically to guerrilla tactics off the board at this point, so in turn 5 I can come in here and score my final Retrieve Octaria's data. So it was, I think it was a good win at the end. I mean, just 2 broadsides, 2 battle suits in a unit of fire warriors left is maybe like 350 points. I mean, I have a squad of Terminators, the Tech Marine, the 2 squads of Incursors, and most of a squad of Blade Guard veterans. So I guess probably like 600-700 points. So I feel like I definitely played this game right. And I honestly don't know how I could have done much better, because the shooting that the Tau put out is very, very nasty. And it was shown to me, the one play that I made that was a bit risky, where I put my Chapter Master out in the open thinking I can activate Armor Indomitus and keep him alive, and if he, I can get 1 free reroll, and I can spend 1 CP to get a second reroll, and you can see down here in the top I actually had 1 CP again left sort of in turn 4, and I get nothing to spend CP on at this point. So I had some CP left, but it just reminds me how good Tau are at shooting, and, if the commander with the fusion blades hadn't rolled hot, then maybe my Chapter Master would have stayed alive, but, I mean, things swing in Warhammer games. Overall, I think I was also a little bit taken aback when the Chapter Master died so quickly to, like, a couple of rounds of fire and then, like, a charge from the Tau. I was like, oh shit, like, the Chapter Master is kind of core to my strategy. The rerolls I think he provides a lot, and maybe losing him in this game early on was a good thing for the rest of the tournament. Maybe I played him a little bit too aggressively. But overall, I mean, primary-wise, I feel like I controlled most of the board for most of the game. Just didn't score too high on Oath of Moment, and one of the reasons I guess I didn't score too high for Oath of Moment is, like I said, there's no vehicle keywords in Tau. I'm killing vehicles every turn, so to speak, like battlesuits, but I'm not getting any points for it from Oath. If this had been another army similar, I would have had like 5 more points from Oath of Moment. So maybe my secondaries weren't super suited against the Tau list, but I did think I would be able to get the win regardless of my secondary choices. And I honestly didn't see a better secondary to pick than Engage on All Fronts, and I don't typically like Engage on All Fronts, because I definitely try and slow play the first couple of turns of the game. And maybe by picking Engage on All Fronts, I actually push my Chapter Master forward, whereas like if I didn't have Engage on All Fronts, if I just had something that was like, grind them down or something, which I definitely probably did pretty well on this table, that would have maybe stopped me making that play. But I like to slow play my army. You guys know that. I like to get good support from my firing units. And my firing units did a good amount of work here. They definitely drew a bunch of fire. The Sanctuary Guard making the charge against the 9-man squad of Crisis Suits was essentially a suicide charge, but it was very important, because I don't know how else I kill that 9-man squad of Crisis Suits. The firepower that they put out against my Dreadnoughts was gnarly. He had that Veteran Cadre upgrade on them, I think it's called. Veteran Cadre, yeah, and it costs them like 2 CP for 4+ models, and I think it just makes all of them better at shooting. And yeah, they were a really nasty unit. A lot of shield generators in there as well. The 8-man Sanctuary Guard with full Chapter Master rerolls didn't even kill the whole unit, and that was after I'd killed the 9 shield drones in the previous turn with the Volcons. So this was actually a well put together Tau list. When Tau get their new codex, I don't know if if Tau had their new codex, this could have been a much closer game. This was a good, well thought out Tau list, and I enjoyed the game against it. The Intercessors, basically their job for the entire game was to do some data and also clear out the deep strikes that he had. And in the 4th turn here, you can see the Infiltrators are now gone. We guerrilla tactics them to bring them in over here once the Terminators basically mop this up, so there's plenty of room for them to bring in and do my final data. I really think that's why Infiltrators and Incursors can add so much value, because if these were Intercessors, then they'd have sat there the entire game. They probably wouldn't have got much to shoot at anyway, because I need to hold these and hide them. And then in the final turns, there's no way I can get a squad of Intercessors across the 6 inches across the board, or 6 inches into that quadrant to do Retrieve Octarius data. So having that 1 CP left here in turn 4, you usually always have a CP left. You can guerrilla tactics and score some data that you never managed to get previously. As I said, I didn't manage to kill this last broadside unit, and I had earmarked that as one of the biggest threats, but he kept them so far back, and he rolled pretty good on their shooting throughout the game. It was impossible for me to get to them. So looking back at it, I don't know if there's much else I could play this. The Sanguinary Guard had to do that suicide charge, and in some ways it kind of won me the game, because killing 7 of 9 of a 700 point squad model with the Sanguinary Guard, I mean, that's getting me like twofold results. You know, my Sanguinary Guard cost 250 points. They probably killed 550 points of models. Yes, they're dead after that, but it's a 2-for-1 points trade. And I think that was a trade that I had to take. And it was only able to be done because I managed to get a charge from obscuring position. If I couldn't have made that charge from the obscuring position, the Greater Good could have absolutely killed like so many Sanguinary Guard models. The airburst rounds are no AP, so I guess the Sanguinary Guard being in cover were on a 1-up save, so they were kind of able to survive pretty well against that. So, in conclusion, 21-point victory, as I said. It was a difficult match and I couldn't get to the broadsides. They actually did roll hot all game. He killed quite a lot of units with the broadsides, like the dreadnoughts and that. Charging from the obscure position, like I said, helped to break down to the last units. And in this tournament, I ran 1 squad of Sanguinary Guard and it was an 8. And the Sanguinary Guard are so precious in Blood Angels lists, I'm going to move towards running 2 squads of Sanguinary Guard. If that's my one takeaway from this tournament, I'm gonna make it that I can take 2. I actually lost more units than I felt comfortable with in this. You know, sometimes you can be winning a game and you can feel comfortable, you can know you're going to win the game. I never felt like this in this game, especially losing the Chapter Master, especially using the Sanguinary Guard and multiple Dreadnoughts early in the game. And I felt like I deployed pretty well, and I got to go first, right? So I used my firepower in turn 1 pretty effectively. So if he'd gone first, this could have actually been 10 points closer in either way. Yeah, I mean, I think the primaries are what helped me seal this victory. So I beat him by 15 points in primaries, and that was a victory. And I mean, that's the one weakness Tau have, right? They've got that solid gun line, but it's kind of castly. They have to stay together because they're strongest when they're together. So by spreading out on one side of the map, the Blade Guard, the Whirlwind, the Incursors, and then fighting him with the rest of my force. So I basically took that small force out of the battle to hold those primaries. That kind of secured the victory for me. So if you're more experienced than I am playing Tau, leave me a comment down below if there's any nuances or things that I could have used to make this victory a little bit easier. I don't typically ask people to like or subscribe to my videos at the start. I like to get straight into the content. So if you are still here and you did like this video, or you want to see more Blood Angels content, I'd love it if you consider subscribing and hit the little bell notification and turn your notifications to all. That way you'll never miss when I go live or upload a new video. I do release various Blood Angels videos every week, and I will just now link the video that I said last week where I created this tournament plan around this list to get the wins and finish this tournament at the top table. I'll be back very soon with analysis and breakdown of Game 2, which was against Admech, so stay tuned for that. Thank you ever so much for watching. I will catch you next time, brothers. By the blood are we made strong. Peace.